I was talking to a man who was an expert in color coding. Actually, I was interviewing him. And we went through this interview and I found it very fascinating, and I thought it was a terrific idea because I'm pretty good at asking those questions. I'm pretty good at listening, and I know what I'm listening for. And I would be able to size people up pretty quick, I thought. So we had this long conversation. He talked a lot about it. He introduced my audience to, it's really a deep subject. I mean, usually people have a primary color, they have a subcolor, and there could be all these variations, and it could get very technical. I chose to keep it simple for myself, and I'm choosing to keep it simple right now here with you. Because just on the simple, on the surface, does a lot of good in my negotiations. It's changed everything. So when I hung up from talking to this man for about an hour and 15 minutes, my alarm went off on my phone, and it was telling me that I needed to call this seller that I've been trying to buy that house now for about 8 months. Every month I call, and he never makes a move to sell it or not to sell it. Now here's their story. They work almost 7 days a week at the church, volunteer. And someone at the church gave them a house because their daughter was on their 7th child, and she didn't know who the father was for any of the 7 children. Someone at the church felt sorry for them because they're living in this tiny 3-bedroom house there was 3 other kids, plus this daughter, plus now a 7th baby on the way, and the husband and the wife. So this house was very cramped. Someone at the church gave them a big house. And they had moved out of the house that I wanted to buy, the little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, about 1,300 square feet. They had moved out of it, but it had been vacant for the 8 months I've been trying to buy it. And I never can get this man to sell the house. The house was all but free and clear. I think there was a tiny few $1,000s owed on it. They're living in the big house, and this house is empty. I had just had a conversation with this man about color coding. What color do you think my seller is? Well, he was obviously a blue. Very giving, very worried about everyone around him. The very fact that he didn't kick this daughter out of the house and excommunicate her, not after the 4th baby where she didn't know who the father was, not after the 5th baby where she didn't know the father, not after the 6th, and now that she's having a 7th baby, still hanging with his daughter and taking care of all these babies, more and more and more of them. This is a very giving man. This is a person who is blue. They were blue 7 ways to Sunday. So I decided to start talking to this man in the language of blue. And it wasn't really hard because I had someone who wanted that house. And that person really couldn't afford to live in that neighborhood. But their parents lived in that neighborhood, and they needed the parents to take care of their child while they went to work right down the street from that neighborhood. Now, as it was right now, my client that wanted to buy the house was way on the other side of town. And I said, that story is going to resonate with my blue seller. So I called him up immediately after this conversation with the color code master, and I decided to try it. I talked to my seller. Hey, Mr. Smith, how you doing? This is Mitch. It's me again. I know, it's like the 8th month in a row I've called you, right? You know, you probably don't want to sell the house because, for whatever reason, and it's none of my business why you don't. But I thought that I would talk to you about this customer I have and this family that really needs a house in this part of town. I told them that my customer, my prospect lived on the other side of town. I told them that they had children and they had to bring the children to the parents, and the parents lived in this neighborhood. And so if they owned a house in this neighborhood, this would make things easy because their job was also right outside this neighborhood. And that if these people could get into this house, that it would change their lives. The other part was they can't really afford to live in this neighborhood. So we're going to have to get them, I'm going to have to get the house at a price that I can afford to sell it to them and not be at the market price. Well, within an hour and a half, I had contracted that house and was headed to a closing in a couple of days. It was amazing. I had been talking to the blue in the color of green. I was telling him, the house is free and clear. When you sell it to me, you're going to have all this money in the bank. He didn't care about money. He cared about that family, those little children being able to be with the parents, the adults having an easy time getting to the job and taking care of the daycare, and that they were going to move from being a renter to an owner, and that they really couldn't afford it and they wanted to help. And that's what did. I talked to my blue seller in the blue language instead of the green language, and it changed everything. So there you have my story.